Now back to that infection situation. So when you are an omnivore and you eat a lot of carbohydrates, you're essentially a brewery inside.
Einar, how did you find carnivore?
It was 2018, and I was on a very declining health path and pretty much at death doors based on my conversations with the doctors. So I found an article talking about ketogenic diets, and one of the doctors recommended I did a ketogenic diet, and it was for an unrelated issue. I was low fertility problems, and then I listened to Jordan Peterson and his daughter's Michaela Peterson's story. And I decided to give it a shot because keto was helping. So, carnivore diet was something that I was raised by my grandparents, and they taught me. They came from the country, so they taught me ancestral diets to an extent. Uh, so it was easy for me to eat the organ meats, fish, sardines, and things of that nature.
So what kind of health issues were you suffering from?
Oh man, I cornered the market. So, uh, so back at age of 10, I had my first skin cancer, and not long after, around age 14, I was given a lot of antibiotics for no real reason. I was skinny, so they thought maybe I had a bacteria that wouldn't die. So I was given overdoses of tetracycline. So after that, I developed anxiety, depression. I had pain that no one could figure out in muscles and joints, hemorrhoids. I mean, I was a mess at age 14. At age 19, my lung collapsed, and I had my first chronic bladder pain situation from drinking soda. And when I discontinued soda, the pain went away. So slowly, I started developing one issue after another every couple of years. So chronic tendonitis. I made a list, so forgive me for looking to the side. Uh, so eventually, after chronic tendonitis, my chronic bladder pain came back, which is also called sometimes prostatitis on males. In females, it's called interstitial cystitis of the bladder. So at age 30, in my mid to late 30s, I had to pee every 15 minutes. The pain wouldn't go away. There was no treatment. There was nothing they could do except for to give me a long laundry list of things I couldn't eat. The tendonitis got worse. I couldn't move. I couldn't open and close my hands. Later on, I developed. I made the list because it's way too much. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia. I had no vitamin D. It was just nothing. High triglycerides. My eyesight. I only did enough for reading or close, but I can see you now at the distance without my glasses. So, um, let me see, vision loss. I was pre-diabetic or probably fully diabetic at the time. Skin cancer came every couple of years. I have more stitches than a baseball at this point. Arthritis, pretty much on every joint. The chronic depression, the anxiety. I couldn't conceive. I have kids now thanks to the carnivore diet. And nail biting. Most people don't associate a nail biting is actually an autoimmune disorder. And those are the ones that they can diagnose because they diagnose based on symptoms. Uh, so it is very hard to diagnose things that were not symptomatic. Like later on, I developed TMJ, transmandibular joint pain. It's a horrible disease. I've been able to cure that, and carnivore could not help me. I developed it during carnivore. Um, Esophagitis, gout, vertigo. Uh, that's out of the top of my head. So some things carnivore might not be able to heal it. or at least quickly enough. It's just too painful. And I have I mean, this is not really, this is a theory that has way too much evidence that we process food not just by absorption. The first thing that the standard American diet or a high carb diet does and a low salt diet is that the pH on your stomach goes up because you're not eating enough salt. The chlorine and the sodium breaks apart, and the chlorine is what makes the hypochloric acid that destroys the food and makes it very acidic, like most carnivore animals. So I had also horrible heartburn most of my life since I was 14. Then the second issue is that the bacteria that lives in your gut is 80% of your immune disease. And one issue that I also had, I forgot to mention that, was a histamine intolerance. So when I did the carnivore diet, I was still having issues, and I had to eat raw beef. I will cinch it about 30 seconds per side, and I will just eat it there raw, literally raw. And I will like 1-inch steaks. So I learned a lot by joining since 2018 to a lot of the carnivore tribes, and I spent a lot of time helping people, and I put all my research in 2 books. I'm going to be working on the 3rd and probably 4th book, I'm not sure. And unfortunately are not bestsellers because as you may notice, carnivore lifestyle requires a lot of discipline, and discipline doesn't sell well. So beside that, I'm trying to do a nutraceutical company because, that's what people want. They give me a pill and fix me with a pill. They don't make me work hard. So I discovered also that fasting was a key component. There is a lot of great research on the the British Medical Journal, that 18-hour fasting is very, very healthy. It is something that's natural, is biblical, and if you study the populations of the Middle East, they fast a month out of the year. They eat the most sugar, but they have the lowest cancer rate because of the fasting during Ramadan. So through all my research, I discovered, for example, that Japanese and Koreans live the longest. They eat the most meat. They also consume the most iodine rich foods. So their levels of iodines are about 15 times greater than any other country in the world. So after I did the carnivore diet, I started doing experiments to figure out how to solve some of the other issues that I couldn't fix. And yeah, I followed the wagon here and there, but nothing serious or big. So back then, the carnivore tribe was full of alcoholics because everybody drank beer and meat. It was beer and meat that now people don't talk about that much. But back then, so I couldn't drink alcohol. I couldn't eat anything. Everything will react with a histamine intolerance. So I figured out the cause of histamine intolerance is an infection. Same with chronic prostatitis and IC of the bladder. So since I've been 28 years as a biotech engineer, and I made almost every product there is, from cells, vaccines. I didn't do the Moderna vaccine, so no me. And I work with a lot of tissue cultures and stuff. I decided to do a transplant from my son's bacteria in his intestine to mine. So I did the transplant, and my God, things that were just improved a lot, they simply went away. So I was doing a carnivore, fasting, a transplant of the bacteria, and a lot of issues improved even further. The other thing I kind of stumble on is I started thinking, like, wait a minute, most carnivore animals, and I have a dog, they eat certain grasses, certain herbs. And I started analyzing all these herbs that they eat and the ones that I know are medicinal. And there is tons of research. So, for example, chamomile and tarragon, we use them for tea, and that is a family called Artemisia. And the Artemisia genus has a lot of plants. The most famous one of them is Artemisia annua, which is an antiparasitic agent. So Artemisia annua and Artemisia afra was what saved Africa from COVID death. They had the lowest mortality, as far as I know, because they were distributing this to everybody. And they modulate the bacteria in your gut. They're also antiparasitic, and they heal a lot of diseases. So, for example, gout, I couldn't get rid of it, and this took it away. The FMT, or the fecal matter transplant, took care of my TMJ. I didn't know that that was possible. That was a side effect I didn't see. It also got rid of my vertigo. Between that and the Artemisia annua, um, I discovered also Spanish needle, which is very common here in Florida. It was a lot of ancestral use. So human beings figured these things out, and they also figured out they not only knew for thousands of years that you could do like dogs. Dogs go and eat other dogs' poop, and people is like, well, that's disgusting. But where does your bacteria comes from? Usually goes once a child goes through the vaginal canal, it inherits all that bacteria. And children that don't go through it, they usually have a lot of health problems. They also inherit it from breast milk. So I started thinking and researching, and I find that, Koreans and Asian culture probably eat the most probiotic foods than any other culture. That could help a lot to longevity. Is a lot of information. We figure out that we will pre-digest food or add bacteria to our gut. And a lot of people that have issues with the carnivore diet, I try to teach them about this. I try to teach them to eat the raw meat as much as possible, because when you cook it, you're killing the organisms that are in there are going to help you digest it. Then I stumbled into another amazing study because I couldn't process dairy all of a sudden. But there was an amazing study with the Mongolian tribes, and they figured out that they process 3 times more dairy than any other human being. And a lot of people in the carnivore diet, they are like, no, you cannot eat dairy because it makes you sick. Like, how can the food that we're born eating can make us sick? So Mongolian people live with their cattle. They don't pasteurize the milk. They eat it raw. They make cheese that is live culture cheese. And that's what helps them process it, is what the study concluded. Then most recently, I ran into another study with cats, and they fed the cats raw milk and processed milk. And the homogenized milk started giving the cats the same illnesses that we're all suffering from. They had a lot of teeth decay. So anyways, it started making sense. So we here in my house, we try to make a lot of raw foods. We make our own cheese as much as possible. We make our own kimchi. We make our own yogurt. And now I can process a lot of foods that I before it would have given me a flare, and I would be weeks and months in bladder pain, going to the bathroom every few minutes. How about you? From what I saw in your videos, you only eat beef mostly, and drink coffee, which I only do once a week now.
Yeah. Well, no coffee anymore. It's been about a month and a half, I guess, since I stopped coffee. But yeah, I have beef and eggs every day, just pretty much one meal a day.
I couldn't process eggs a lot as well. I was having a hard time with eggs. Now I do eat them, but since I was a child, I've been eating them raw. So I could eat them raw. I didn't have much issue. The moment I cooked them, I started having issue. And now I drink. So I switch. I'm also come from a coffee culture, so I switch from coffee to tea. I do a green teas in the morning with a little bit of cream, not to interrupt the fast. And I drink coffee about once a week, a little bit of espresso with a lot of cream. But yeah, I try not to drink a lot of coffee now.
So what is a day of eating like for you?
Most days I start eating around noon. Sometimes I forget. I might eat like around 2, and I do a lot of pork belly and beef. I eat. Uh, I don't eat grass fed because of the price. I eat a lot of odd cuts of meat to save money. I eat liver, cheek. I do add occasionally. I add sauces to it that I do homemade. So I don't go out to eat. It's very rare. Um, so pork, beef, eggs. I do still buy occasionally bacon from the store because my boys like bacon. Um, I eat a lot of dairy, but it comes and goes. Sometimes I eat cheese like crazy. Sometimes I just don't feel like it. We sometimes fast a couple of days in my house, 2, 3 days, depending. Right now, I'm not super strict on carnivore because I'm testing a new supplement. I mean, it's not a new supplement, but I'm testing it in a new way. It's called N-acetylcysteine, and this is something that we produce when we're fasting. But you and me, we can't really fast for a month. That's just not doable for us. We're way too lean as is. So it seems to be putting my chronic bladder pain into remission, but I only have preliminary data. I only done it like 5 times. Um, I did a video on it while I started, just to make sure that the science behind it was there, and explain to people that are, because I promised a lot of people that I will die or find the cure to this damn disease. And it seems like I'm pretty close. I had an amazing day today. This is my fifth test. It could take up to 5 months, uh, but is I'm hoping that I can heal the last autoimmune disease. After this, I gotta worry about more trivial things, like maybe come up with a way to grow hair back. That will be nice, but it's not as important. The chronic bladder pain is a horrible disease to have. It makes your life very, very miserable, and I endured it for 18 years now.
So, the relief that you're getting from the chronic bladder pain at the moment in the current test that you're doing, like, what can you contrast the difference?
Yeah. So originally, like I said, at first I lost my ability to sleep, and I was going to the bathroom every 15 minutes. It was hard to hold a job. Um, Carnivore improved it significantly. I was going to the bathroom every couple of hours. Fasting helped, especially the flares went away. So if I had a flare, it would last maybe a day, no longer than that. Then the FMT, I felt at first that it almost put it in remission. So that's what made me, and all the studies that I read, made me believe that this is a deep embedded infection. And I'll remind me again to talk about these infections. Because it's important for carnivores to understand these embedded infections. So this NAC experiment that I'm running, there is a one-person trial. So there's a lady about 70 years old, had it for 25 years. So they did intravenous NAC of 6,000. They call it low dose. So I tried doing that because my mother was a veterinarian. I learned how to do a lot of procedures as a kid. So I started doing my own, but it was very painful because I can't find a pharmaceutical grade substance. So I have to make my own IV units at home, and I can sterile filter, but it is probably not as pure. As it was causing me a lot of pain and irritation on the veins, but I started feeling better. Then, because I have all this understanding of transplants of microbiota, I started using enteric capsules. I found 2 studies. I found one study on humans that we will absorb 4 to 10%. And I was like, but that's very low. It doesn't make sense. Then I found a cat study that it absorbed 25% plus or minus 50%. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. Most cats, the ones that are used for experiments, one, they don't feed them 3 times a day, so they eat naturally fast. Second, they eat a lower carb diet because carbs will kill cats a lot faster than human beings. And I'm like, so the study of human beings, they don't put a lot of details of their diet. So obviously the absorption rates are probably much higher. So I put them on enteric capsules and I took about 6,000 milligrams. So the life cycle from the moment you take it, it goes into your blood the same amount that it will go if you do it IV. So I calculated that based on my weight, because you need to take about 100 milligrams per kilo. It was about, for me, it was about 6,000 milligrams to get in the blood, 1,500 milligrams. I think it does the math. And I had to do it for the time that an IV is probably done for about 6 hours, maybe. So I did that math and I had to take 10 capsules every approximately 2.5 to 3 hours. 2.5 hours is better. And it was equivalent. It's not comfortable taking that many capsules, but it's not lethal because it's an amino acid. You will have to hit 300,000 milligrams for it to really hurt you or kill you or more. Because I also look at the death rate on rats. They do experiments on rats and they tell you what's the maximum dose. So the way the NAC works is your body uses NAC to create glutathione, which is the strongest anti-inflammatory in your body. And this goes around and it's like doing a very, very long fast where it goes and clears everything. It rebuilds tissue, it lowers the inflammation, and it allows your immune system to fight these infections. Now, back to that infection situation. So when you are an omnivore and you eat a lot of carbohydrates, you're essentially a brewery inside. So there's all this yeast and all this bacteria that's going to start growing and now competing the normal flora that you should have. So, like I said, dogs came up with a way and cats to eat some grass that modulates and tries to suppress this bacteria that's growing too fast. But we eat so much carbohydrates that there is no amount of supplements, even Artemisia annua, it will hit a point. So I tell people you can take tons of Artemisia annua, but ultimately you have to lower your carb because it's just too much. So all these infections start, all these organisms start growing, and people get sick. They go to the doctor. So you go to the doctor. What are they gonna say? Well, let's shut him up, give him antibiotics so he can feel better right away. Now, there is actually all of my research is mostly in a National Institute of Health sponsored. We know that every antibiotic causes the condition called dysbiosis. So it imbalances the bacteria in your gut, which is who you are. 90% of your DNA is there, 80% of your immune system. Now, what most people don't understand is that, like, especially candida. So when you hit it with antibiotics, candida goes bad. It switches and it becomes a parasite in your body. And it hides inside cells and it starts using sugar to survive, stays there. And it starts attacking the rest of the bacteria in your gut and killing it. Clostridiums do something similar. That's the back pain, and all of that is caused by different type of Clostridiums in my memory searches, because I'm not a full microbiologist. I just know enough to be dangerous. I don't lecture on this every day. So these organisms, they don't go away because they figure out how to stay alive. So when your body sees this infection, they throw fibrin at it, kind of like Spider-Man. They just cover this thing, hide it in there, and it will stop the problem. What that does is they figure out to hide in there. So on these layers are multiple organisms that are parasitic, and your body knows, but then the fibrin blocks your immune system from getting there. And your immune system is already weak as it is from the carbs. interfering with absorption of nutrients. So it cannot get to it. One of the things that glutathione does is it melts that away. And then your body all of a sudden is like, oh, here you are. And it goes and kills them. So that is the theory behind this treatment. And it probably is effective for IBS as well, or Crohn's, or any other. People get mad at me when so I quote a couple of doctors that a lot of people don't like me to do, or they think I don't understand the science behind it. And when they're like, what doctor says that? And I'm like, well, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. She created, I think, on 2008, the GAPS diet, and it's healed a lot of people. My other favorite doctor is Dr. Ken Berry, which is he wrote a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me. So they also done a lot of research, and I base a lot of my work on in either is the same conclusions as they have come, or I learned from them. And this is how I've been battling pretty much every disease to, I'm hoping one day to say I am disease free. And if I feel like cheating on a diet, it's not the end of the world. I can, but the other thing is that people don't understand is when you cheat or break the diet, you can't just go to a restaurant and do it. You can't buy food from a grocery store. That is what makes it really, really bad. So I can have it. If I make bread, I make it for my friends mostly. Only when they invite me to a party, I bring a couple of loaves of bread. It's all made at home. I use pesticide-free, organic, and they love the bread. They all know I'm a carnivore, and I share with them. I have a few beers here and there, but it doesn't break the bank. So, and also, because sometimes making probiotic foods is not everybody's cup of tea. My recommendation to most people, and what a lot of the clinical evidence show, is that there is a yeast, or a family of yeast, which we normally hear a lot about, is the Boulardii, Saccharomyces boulardii, which is from the same family of the yeast that we use for beer. And I'm thinking that human beings figure out that growing this alcoholic beverage in beer and wine, it was very helpful for their microbiome. Because it's an anti-inflammatory. It also modulates the microbiome, so it will kill candida. It will suppress bad organisms and brings good ones up. There is a couple of lactobacillus that I'm also a fan of, especially Rhamnosus and Planetarium. And there is also the Bifidum group. We know that these are essential for longevity, health. We see it present in children. They modulate the microbiome. So if I drink 3 beers, I'm taking, they sell it under a brand, multiple brands that sell low histamine probiotics. And I also have brewer's yeast, which is a very strong anti-inflammatory, and pain is sort of like a painkiller. So I take that next day, I don't even have a hangover or I didn't even notice I had a couple of beers. So it's just using a lot of ancestral wisdom supported by modern science.
It sounds like your family is doing this with you. Is that right?
My fiance, we're probably getting married in a few weeks. We're just trying to set up the day. She's actually an RN. And my children from my previous marriage, when they come here, I do it with them. They're very little, so I don't really got a say. I do let them have fruit because I know that at the mother's house they eat nothing but junk food. But my fiance, she was a nurse in Cuba. When she moved here to the US, she thought I was crazy. She's like, no, you will die if you fast. You will die if you don't eat 3 times a day, or if you eat only meat. And she tried it with me, and she was like, oh God, all my health problems started going away immediately. And even her temper changed. And she noticed the big difference. My friends know about it. They're not full carnivores, but they understand and they try. Uh, but it is very difficult. I think, as Natasha McBride will say, um, social life sometimes forces you to break the diet. You will have no friends, and it happened to me. My friends are like, "You're crazy. First, you're eating poop." That sounds crazy as it is. Then you're not eating anything but beef. I mean, we can hang out. So, you make some sacrifices, and I come out with ways to overcome all the problems. They have stayed friends after 5 years, which is it's remarkable. A lot of people will probably not do that. They'll label you as crazy and they stay away from you.
What is the routine you're doing at the moment? So, are you eating one meal a day, and like how often are you fasting?
I eat 1 or 2 meals a day, and I fast. I try to fast at least 18 hours a day, give or take 2 hours. Sometimes I do 20, sometimes I do 14, 16, but I try very hard to fast 18 hours a day. It is actually, let's forget about the health benefits. Productivity wise, you get so much done because you're spending less time cooking, you spend less time prepping, and I mean, there is really no need. Once you get used to it, it becomes, you get back an hour a day. um, so
I found for myself, just the change, not having to think about food all the time, just made me so much more productive, because I always had
uh,
that little voice in my head going, what are you gonna eat next? What are you gonna eat next? What are you gonna, and it's so distracting.
I mean, now I think like, I missed a meal, I missed 2 meals, I'll eat later, and I bench it then, whatever I couldn't eat before, and I'm fine. And one thing that I had a lot of problems with was clarity of mind. So when I did the carnivore diet, I was suffering from brain fog, which is probably a precursor to Alzheimer's and dementia. It is a diabetes related issue. So now I have a clarity of mind and purpose that is annoying to everybody around me. I feel like I have to slow down for everybody. And I gotta come, all my friends are calling me for advice, and I'm like, just do it. Why you keep on talking about what you're gonna do it. Don't you have the time? Don't you have the desire of getting it done? Because I stopped thinking about analysis paralysis. Now I just do instead of overthinking and living in fear and stress. My mind doesn't work against me now, it works with me. Like, I mean, I'm a chronic procrastinator. I wrote 2 books. I sat down one day and I wrote 10,000 words in one day. Month I had 30,000 words. In 3 months, I had a book published. And I was like, I mean, I do this for work, but for my own personal, trying to help other people, I just wouldn't do it. So I wrote 2 books, and I'm not going to say are the greatest books in the world. They're just the best I can do at this time. Hopefully, they continue to make them better through different revisions. I learn more, and I can add to it, and I can help other people. Uh, but it's just, you feel accomplished. They're all saying that you should plant a tree, write a book, and I can't remember what the third one is. I have planted a gazillion trees, reading a bunch of books. So I'm like way ahead of the game already. But imagine if all of us were doing this all the way from our late teens. We would have accomplished so much by the time we're 30, instead of
Right.
just running around on the hamster wheel and being prey to our own anxieties and depression. I have wasted so much time on that. And yeah, another thing that I forgot is my teeth. So everybody around me, and all my cousins are doctors and dentists and nurses, and they know I'm right. And one of them told me recently, cousin, all they teach us in medical school is how to sell drugs. We don't know how to fix any illness. It was very sad. I knew it. I think the most knowledge I had of medicine came from my mother as a veterinarian doctor, uh, because she had there was no influence at that time when she learned medicine from the food industry, um, coming up with all these false studies and their bad conclusions. So teeth cavities, I've been able to get rid of them. So even with a carnivore diet, it was still an issue. I had some gum problems. Uh, and then I decided to make my own toothpaste, and it sounds a little weird and eccentric, but so nature came up with ways to make. So plants are most 99% of plants are toxic, but we human beings figure out to use that toxicity to create medicine. So the bark of pomegranate, the is part of the royal jelly of bees, and coconut oil, Artemisia annua. You mix all of that and you brush your teeth with it, unactivated charcoal, and yeah, it looks ugly. Your teeth might not be as white as other people as you would like, but I haven't had cavities now in a very long time. I canceled my health insurance. I don't have to pay $15,000 a month and a year anymore, like most people have to do in America. And I don't have to pay thousands of dollars to a dentist anymore. My gums are healthy for once in my life. All the bone loss that I had is come back. Even so I went to a dentist. This happened to me, and she's like, "You lost a lot of bone. We gotta take your molar out." And I'm like, what are the odds? And she's like, less than 30% that you'll regain it. So she gave me a bunch of antibiotics. And on my way home, that's how I came up with all this toothpaste. So I went on a 3-day fast, or a 5-day fast. And about a month later, I show up at the dentist. She completely forgot about it. So I asked her to take an x-ray. And she's like, you're good. And I go like, but you told me I was going to lose my molar. She's like, well, I don't remember that. And she goes to look on the chart. It's like, yeah, what did you do? Like, like I told my doctor, I did the opposite of what you told me.
So this is always so interesting for me to hear about gum health well, just oral health generally, because seeing articles and studies that link bad negative oral health to dementia.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that when you start eating carnivore, when you're fasting, when you're doing these things, that it just improves.
Beers. So
Mm.
about 10 to 15 from all the archaeological digging sites, we figure out that about 10 to 15,000 years ago, right around the agricultural evolution, some of the bacteria on the teeth mutated. And it's what now causes gum disease and cavities and all of that. And I mean, most carnivores don't have an issue. You could still have it. So one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make on carnivore diet is that, one, they don't think like a hunter. They don't think like a prey animal. So we're being so socialized and so everything in the house has to be sterile. When you eat meat, you have to eat it in specific, has to be cooked to death. And I tell people it's already dead. You don't have to kill it more with a pressure pot and heat. It's just not necessary. I mean, I understand it for a hard, tough meat, yeah, but for most of the times you don't have to. So even when you eat a lot of protein, your body has the ability to turn protein into glucose. So to some people, you might still have cavities as a carnivore and you're struggling. I've seen a lot of people, I give them advice, they don't lose weight on carnivore oh, I'm stuck. So the first thing I ask is, how much protein are you eating? Well, they're eating nothing but protein. So it's no different than eating nothing but sugar, because your body is like, okay, I got to make something out of this protein because I don't have fat. So I can't turn it into fat. I got to turn it into sugar. So you're going back to a glucose wagon. So I try to teach people to eat at least at 25, 30%. I had somebody recently, I was like, I'm constipated. It's been 2 weeks. I don't know what to do. Eat a stick of butter. So you will not
That'll
stop
get you
going to the
going.
bathroom.
Mm.
Yes. So, but we have demonized fat so much and salt so much that that most people don't think. We used to travel 200,000 miles to grab some salt, and we're constantly vitamin C, vitamin C. I'm like, if you don't need carbohydrates, you don't need vitamin C, and the vitamin C is recycled by the body. So, and you can get it from meat as well. They also make a mistake. They go in eat crazy eating chicken, and I'm like, that's just a low fat bird that it's really not going to help you. So there is a lot of ignorance, misinformation. Everybody with a Facebook or a YouTube thinks they're scientists, and I'm not a genius. And I always, my disclaimers are, I'm not a doctor. Thanks God I'm not a doctor. Thanks God I'm not a nutritionist. I don't have a personal opinion on this. All I have is scientific research and personal experiments, and the amount of anecdotal evidence that I have is very, very high. It's abnormally high. Uh, but it's sugar is so addictive, and it is very hard. It's actually 10 times more addictive than heroin and cocaine. So, but I understand. Is you feel like you're gonna die if you don't eat it, which is sad, but I can save my own family. My mom, a doctor, chooses to have organs removed rather than going on a diet. All my aunts and uncles and cousins, no, telling them what I know and seeing the change in me, they still, and this is new in my family. My family, they were centenarians up to until they moved to the U.S. Everybody in my family lived well into the hundred and very, very healthy. And they did eat bread, but it was all homemade. They ate 1, 2 meals a day tops. They will eat a lot of lard. There was no vegetable oils. So they moved to the US, then the sedentary lifestyle and the food, the overwhelming amount of food that we eat here is horrible.
Yeah. So, if someone came to you for advice, and how do I get rid of all these conditions? I've got joint pain, I've got, you know, gum disease, I've got all these problems, and I'm overweight. What
Mhm.
would you recommend to them?
Well, a lot of times I will say, well, first you have to learn to fast. And I wouldn't try to quit everything at once because it's hard. The first thing is learn to fast and move your eating habits by an hour a day till you get used to fasting for 18 hours. That will be the very first big win. Then choose if you're going to do a low carb diet and quit coffee and alcohol. Don't do all of it at the same time. If you can fast 3 days, that will be great. 3 days, it will be pretty good. But if you cannot, then try cutting down on carbs. Start with a ketogenic diet, modify ketogenic diet. Try to 100 grams of carbs, then lower it till 50 until you go well into ketosis. But fasting will be the fastest way to go into ketosis. The struggle that a lot of people have is eating organ meats, eating raw meat or meat that's not super cooked. Then I will ask them to introduce iodine or iodine-rich foods. A lot of people they don't like the taste of liver, they don't like the taste of sardines or fish. So that's a big challenge to a lot of people. We don't think uh, we don't think like animals, and I try to teach people you have to think like an animal, like a prey animal. Salt will be the other thing. I will ask them to start increasing the amount of salt they eat. But a lot of these things will be based also on symptoms, because although all diseases are the same, there are some diseases that not even the carnivore will help you to get rid of them. And most people don't know. Some you can live if you stay as a carnivore. The moment you eat a gram of carb, they will come back. Then I will ask them to start addressing some of these infections if I think that it's an infection related. So one of the advice I give them is to take Artemisia annua, or Artemisia annua preferably, or Artemisia afra, to high doses. So, but not jump in, because you could have a condition called die-off. What die-off causes is that whatever organism is infecting you, or the overgrowth that you have, imbalance in your microbiome, a lot of them are going to start dying, and you're going to have an allergic reaction or an anaphylactic reaction. You're going to feel crappy. And you hear this is part of the ketosis state, because a lot of these organisms start dying. It's not just the sugar being dropped. So then I asked them to do Artemisia annua, 1 capsule a day. I work with a vendor in Miami that's the one that I wrote the book for. The first book for is called Bulletproof Your Health with Artemisia. Then if you have a parasite or a parasitic infection or different things, this could get rid of it. So you start taking 1 capsule a day, you hit 5 grams a day for 30 days. And depending on your condition, you can stay on it and take it for life. It won't do any harm. Especially if you have like a lot of diarrhea during carnivore diet, this will help you constipate so you're not having accidents everywhere. A lot of carnivores don't like this advice, because it's like, oh, plants are not part of the diet. I'm like, animals do this all the time when they have infections or issue. So the next thing I will ask them is to start taking certain probiotics, like a low histamine probiotic that will have those 2 lactobacillus, rhamnosus, and planetarium, the bifidum or brewer's yeast, but not take. If I had somebody call me, oh, I took 5 capsules a day. I'm like, no, just 1 capsule, 2 capsules a day tops. That will start helping you build your microbiome. The other thing I advise people is get the hell out of the cities. And I'm working very hard at doing that. Even if I have to get like an acre or two, I'm working very hard to get some land to grow my own food. Learn to grow your own food, work in your own garden, get full of manure, because there is a lot of study and evidence showing that this interaction. So I forgot to mention this. So when I did the FMT, I stopped biting my nails. I've been biting my nails for 45 years. And I figured that the reason is because I was looking for dirt and bacteria to infect my intestine and help me. I had that epiphany. I had this clarity of mind where all these things just went like, whoop, and it all made sense. So a lot of gardening with a lot of manure will be another good thing to do. Stop sterilizing everything around the house. Try to make your own food as much as possible. And a lot of people cannot stay on a strict carnivore diet for the rest of your life. But if you don't, then fast longer periods of time. Come up with ways and try to keep track of what you're eating and how much you're eating. Not counting calorie wise, but sugar starts sneaking into higher amounts in your diet. And anything over 50 grams is not great, probably 100 grams is tolerable. There is a great documentary called Fat Fiction, and they cite that about 80% of your calories can come without any ill effects. There is also a very good study that came out about a few months ago about alcohol. So we now know that alcohol doesn't really cause liver disease. They took a group of rats and they gave one tallow, beef fat, and alcohol, the other one pork fat and alcohol, and the other one vegetable oil and alcohol. The ones with tallow had almost, it was like zero point 0.7 liver issues. The one with pork about 2.5, and the difference is probably because so cows have 3 stomachs and pigs and chickens have 1. So when you give them toxic food, they don't process it as well, so there's more toxins in there. But the people that ate the rats that ate the vegetable oil, they have 50% cirrhosis of the liver. So we had lied to the public with very bad information, telling them that alcohol is bad for you. And it's not as bad. I mean, I'm not saying become a full-blown alcoholic, but it's not really that detrimental to your health. Same with dairy. A lot of people are like, well, I'm lactose intolerant. Most Mongolians are lactose intolerant. They eat 3 times more dairy than the rest of us do.
Wow.
So the reason they don't live as long is because they eat a lot of wheat products. And right now we're selling vegetable oils to everybody. Every time I love watching cooking. I love Anthony Bourdain, but all I see every time they cook something is just a bottle of vegetable oil. Shh. I'm like, damn, you just kill some pork there. So like they eat a lot of meat, but their longevity is dropping. The world longevity is dropping. They're blaming it on COVID, but it has nothing to do with COVID. I had COVID. It was not as bad. So I had it for a week. My son had it for 1 day. And I did a fecal transplant right after that, 24 hours. And my COVID symptoms disappear in an hour. All of it. Because it goes in and attacks your microbiome. So Natasha McBride found some interesting research, and I went and did my own research because I don't trust anyone. A lot of people say things that are not always unfounded. She said that we now know that the appendix is where the microbiome hides, is the repository of your microbiome, where your body keeps the research. So if something happens, goes back there, brings that bacteria back to your gut, you get better. So we keep on removing appendix right and left from people. Gallbladders, we keep on removing them. You go to the doctors here in the States, like $30,000 for any of these little procedures, which no doctor stops to think, wait a minute, let's put this person to fast for 3 days and they will probably get better. They just simply remove the organ.
It's not as much money in fasting.
No money at all. I met a doctor the other day, and he was we were talking, and the moment that I started showing him the information and literature and my books, he started going back. And I thought he was very pro new things and helping, but and they invested $500,000 in their degree. It's hard to go against that. I mean,
Yeah.
I invested $100,000 in my education, and I'm now probably throwing it out the window because if the industry finds out or I become slightly known that I talk about these things.
So, Einar, do you have a way of reaching out to you? Do you have any social media or website or anything if people want to get in
Yes.
contact?
Well, they can always contact me through my Facebook page. I have a YouTube channel called Engineering Health. I'm usually not as articulated because I talk a lot about science stuff. It's a lot easier when I'm asked questions. And I'm trying to start a company right now. You can email me at my name, einarjordan@hotmail.com. I'm starting I'm trying to start a company called Curandero Nutraceuticals, which is curandero means a healer in Spanish. Uh, and I mean, I'm searchable. You can see my career on LinkedIn. Um, so I'm out there trying to do the best I can to help people. I spend at least 1 to 3 hours a day helping people out. They call me with some of the worst diseases and situations. Most of them are not as bad as I was, to be honest, and they have not done it as long. They have not gone through it as long. They're just, but I understand the desperation that I had is the one they have. Is this is horrible. The suicide rates on people with IBS, chronic bladder pain, and fibromyalgia are like 20%. I wanted to add one last thing that I forgot. So the medical industry is focused a lot on your genetics. And what most people don't know is that the microbiome is the wall that protects your genetics. So your microbiome is the result of the food you eat. And if you don't eat the right food to promote the good microbiome, then it will interact with your genetics and it will trigger the illnesses. So, for example, you will get Crohn's disease, I will get IBS, or I might get IBS 10 years after you. Eventually, it will trigger every disease, or you die before. But any disease that we have it can be protected by the microbiome. Those infections are the ones that start triggering these diseases. That's one thing I found out and I put in one of my books. My books have some unfortunate name. The second book I wrote is called Good Shit: The Complete Guide to Fecal Microbiome Transplant and Alternatives. Because it's very dangerous to do this at home. Again, let me no disclosure: do not go crazy doing this. Finding a donor is impossible. 97% of the population has dysbiosis, has a very bad microbiome, and most people are not qualified to know. Because you can do all the blood tests in the world. I learned working with doctors picking tissue donors. I had to create the suitability criteria. So I have a long list in my book of how to know what autoimmune disorders you have. Even doctors don't know what certain features are. Like TMJ, nobody told me it was an autoimmune disorder, and it is. They didn't know.
So that is also, if people want to get hold of your books, are they available on Amazon?
Yes, they're both available on Amazon. Good shit. They can look at it under my name. It pops up, Einar Jordan. Good shit and bulletproof your health with Artemisia. I'm now waiting for results on the chronic bladder pain, so I can start writing my third book. I have the title picked already, but I don't want to say it in case somebody else tries to steal the name. I try to come up with very interesting names for my books.
Sure. Well, I'll link to all those below. Ina, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dave. Anytime you need anything, reach out. And if you need me to help anyone, send them to me. I'll do my very best. They might not like my advice, like they won't like yours, but it is what works.